On this episode of Bigfoot Crossroads, I am joined by a couple of Bigfoot buddies of mine, Kurt Stanley and Evans Bailey. They are the team behind the North Canadian River Project, and in my opinion, are two of the most dedicated people in the field trying to solve this mystery. I am joined by a couple of fellow Okies in the Bigfoot world, a couple of guys I've known for a long time, Kurt Stanley and Evans Bailey of the North Canadian River Project. You might remember Kurt from, 4 years ago on the channel. He was one of the very first people that I participated in an interview with, talking about the Oklahoma Chicken Man from his area. And Evans, you might know if you're a member of the Bigfoot Outlaws Hideout. He's one of the moderators there. Great guy, great couple of guys. Been trying to work things out to get him on here and talking with me for a very long time. I'm glad it's finally able to happen. Even though it's not under the best circumstances right now out there, but we're doing what we can. Kurt and Evans, welcome. How are you guys doing?
Doing well, great,
Matt. Considering the circumstances, thanks for the invitation.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. What are you guys doing to maintain your sanity, Evans? I know you're pretty busy still, aren't you?
Yes, I work for a state environmental agency, and of course, as you can imagine, things are pretty crazy right now. Probably 98% of our staff are working from home. Through online resources. So, it's pretty crazy. I manage a section of 7 folks and just trying to keep up with what projects they're working on and keep everything moving. The days have been pretty long.
What about you, Kurt? Are you writing any music or anything? What are you doing there?
Well, I still play around with my bass guitar once in a while and try to write something down once in a while as well. But no, recently, Matt, I've been doing the same thing. I go to work every day. I'm the operations manager at a big privately owned condominium over in Oklahoma City. And I have an office. I'm by myself in the office. And then I have a maintenance man, and he's out on the grounds by himself. So I don't have to come into close proximity with anybody. And so far, I just go to work every day. But I can sure see what's going on around me, and I can see how the reactions of the people that live there have changed drastically since they've been all cooped up.
Yeah, attitudes are changing. Some for the better, some for the worse. However, we're interested in Bigfoot, and this doesn't really affect what you guys do too much whenever it comes to Bigfoot. Social distancing is kind of part of the gig. You try to get as far away from people as you can most of the time. I wanted to go back first to start off. Whenever I had you on, Kurt, you weren't really researching or investigating at that point, were you?
I had been out there by myself. And later on, I discovered, after talking to you and Bear and a few other people, it was probably not the wisest thing I've ever done in my life. But off and on over the years, probably 20 years, I would be out there by myself. I'd spend the night out by myself and everything else. But I kept it quiet. But research, I wouldn't call it research. I just wanted to see another one. Yeah. I saw one in 88, and it changed my whole universe. And I was just kept trying to see another one and really didn't know that much about it. Started learning more about it and kind of got out in the open. I came out of Bigfoot closet in 2014, pretty much. And of course, you the Outlaws were a big part of that. You remember?
Yeah. I'm trying to, it's been so long. I don't remember if it was right after or at the same time. When did you get the tree picture?
I got that in, let's see, September of 2015.
Okay. And why don't you talk a little bit about that picture? Because, I mean, I consider that picture a big deal. Now, people always hear Bigfoot photo and they want, the clear out in the open, it's waving at you shot. And that's not what this is. But it is a photo where you can clearly see it's there. And it's one of those things where it shows how easy these things would be to miss out in the woods whenever you're looking right at them, or there's one right there. Kind of talk about the picture, how you got it, and the analysis and all that stuff, if you don't mind.
No, I don't mind. I had gone out to the river not to do research that day. It was, we call it Area 1, and it's where Evans and I first started doing research together. And we'd make no bones about it. We'd like to share as much as we can with all the other groups that we're associated with, especially the Outlaws, just all of them. And it's the old river bridge out north of El Reno. And that's where the Chicken Man came to play in 1969, 70, right in there. Anyway, I wasn't going out there that day to do any research. I rode my Harley out there to check on the water level because a friend and I were thinking about canoeing the river. We go up west of El Reno to Calumet, and there's a bridge there called Ellison Bridge, and we would put off there, and somebody would drop us off. And then, like the next day, we'd camp out in between, and then the next day they would come along and pick us up at the old 81 River Bridge. So I went out there to check the water level, and I was had my camera out there. I was going to take some digital photos for him to look at. And you don't want to go out there if it's too high, because it's just a wild ride. It's over with before you know it. And you don't want to go out there when it's too low, or you'll be dragging your canoe across a bunch of sandbars. So we went on, I went on out there, and I was taking a few photos towards the west, and behind me to the east. And mind you, I'm on the north side of the North Canadian River right there. I heard a whoop and a cough. It's like whoop, just like that. And I thought, well, shoot, I didn't even see a pickup or a truck or nothing. Some kids, and we'll walk down there with their fishing poles and stuff, a mile or two out of town to fish. And I thought, well, there's somebody down there fishing. So I just turned around, and before I walked to lean over the edge, I just took a few snapshots, not more than about 3 of the other side of the tree line over there, and stuck my head down there and looked around, and there was nobody down there. So I thought, okay, I might have something here. I went ahead and took a couple more shots of, there's an antenna sticking up there in the original photo, which I know I've sent you the original. I don't know how long it was, Matt. I was sitting at home, and I was playing around with my research stuff, and I got on those photos, and I started zooming them in and looking up in the foliage and this and that. And that one, I zoomed in, I went, oh, my God, that guy is staring right at me. And so I cropped it and tried to clean it up the best I could and all that. And I thought, man, that is a booger. That is a young booger hanging on to the limb up in that tree, staring at me. He's got his mouth open, and he resembles a lot the one I saw from 12 feet away in 1988, my first encounter. So I sent it immediately. I tried to find some people to help me, and nobody seemed interested in helping me out, or they couldn't. They didn't know how to do it. I still haven't really met anybody yet that goes, hey, I'm a photography guru, and I do all kinds of forensic photos and stuff. I was hoping to find somebody that did the forensic photos on license tags that are caught by vendors' cameras. When they commit a crime, they'll go by a store or something,
right,
and they'll get them on there. Yeah, but it takes a forensic photographer, image expert, and they can, I don't know how they do it, but they can reassemble digital patterns in a digital camera or whatever. Well, long story short, I finally got a hold of the University of Oklahoma and the imagery photography department, and there was a professor, I always forget, it's like Schultz or something like that. It's like a German last name or something. And he said, yeah, send it to me. He goes, send me the original and send it in the highest format you can. So I sent him I forgot what it is, like 12 megabytes, my original photo. And, but anyway, he took it, he dissected it. They enhanced the foliage around it. They did a couple of negative. I don't know what all they did to it. The only picture they sent back was a zoomed up photo of it with the foliage enhanced. And all the foliage is like lime green color, and the subject is brown. And he busts right out of that photo then. And their determination was that it's definitely not pareidolia. It's something there. You've got something there. They didn't want to comment any further on it. And when I pushed it, I basically got an email back that told me they don't get grant money from Bigfoot. And, but recently, just to end this real quick, recently, just a few weeks ago, I was telling Evans, I got an email from a guy, and he asked for my phone number, and he told me who he was. He was an undergrad working under that same professor at OU, and he was looking through some files and saw my photo in there, and he started messing with it himself. And he wanted to talk to me on the phone, and he called me, and he goes, I've seen a Bigfoot before. My wife and I were traveling, and it crossed the road and it stopped and looked at us, and he went on. He was excited, like most people that get to see one, and he was asking me all kinds of questions about it and all that. He goes, "It's definitely some type of primate up in that tree," and it made me feel better about it. But I still hope that someday somebody can get the photo and do something more about it.
Is there a place online where people can go and see the photo?
Sure, they can go and they can find it in the easiest place is YouTube. And all you need to do is search for Bigfoot photo capture, Oklahoma. And my YouTube name is Maxa Mista, which is a giant monster in Cheyenne language.
Could you spell that?
Sure. It's MAXEMISTA.
So there you are, folks, if you want to check out the photo, because one of the common things that happens in the Bigfoot world, whenever somebody claims to have evidence or they do have evidence, well, why didn't you send it off to anybody? Why didn't you have it analyzed? And you did that. You took it as far as you could. And these are the results that you got. It's confirmed that it's not pareidolia. There's something there. I mean, for all they know, you could have been, pulling their leg, so I get them not being able to comment, and it's a controversial thing. You don't want to be the OU college professor that, said there's a Bigfoot in this photo. But right. They confirmed, you can take a look at the photo. What else could it be? The location that the photo was taken and everything. That's always kind of been my thing is, there's definitely something there, and I don't know what else it could be. But if you happen to hear this and you are a photography expert or forensics investigator of any kind, and you would like to mess with the photo, Kurt is willing to share. Another rare thing in the Bigfoot world. But you guys, You said it before, but you guys don't seem to get involved in the drama and the BS. And you seem to be pretty open and working with people and sharing your information. And there needs to be more people like that. You guys are keeping it about the Bigfoot and not the personalities, which is awesome. Evans.
Well, Matt, you mentioned location. The location of that photo is also less than a mile from the where the casino footage was shot, the Concho Casino. That's just right across the pasture from there.
Wow. The casino footage. Is there a bigger legend in Oklahoma Bigfooting than the casino footage?
Maybe the siege at Honaby, maybe.
Yeah. I was just thinking about the casino footage the other day. And just the idea that video exists somewhere. Somebody's got it.
Yeah. Yeah, right. Those that have seen it. This was I don't think he's there anymore, but he was a security, worked for the security out there, and he got to see it. And he just told me, he goes, I did never, he goes, it wasn't that I didn't believe in it. And my tribe has old stories about it and all that. He goes, but I just blew them off. He goes, until I saw that video, and now I know that they exist. And he goes, so I'm all for what you're doing out there, and I said, well, thanks. I wish I could get a copy of it.
Yeah. That same guy, I assume, because I can't imagine there'd be too many security guards out there that had access and saw the video. Talked to another person I know. I know some people that worked there that saw it whenever it happened. And I also talked to another guy that knew the security guard that told him the story. And like I said, everybody's stories match up. I mean, and the specific details and everything about it, like, it's not a person in a suit, and not everybody's going to be lying and keep their story straight, and there's no reason for it. I mean, it got the casino a lot of attention, but they didn't want it. And
right.
They did their best to shut it down,
Anything that has to duck under a 10-foot mercury vapor light is not something that you want in the parking lot with old people. That's why one of the bus drivers or more quit their job. Yeah. They're waiting for transports to haul back and forth to El Reno, and they were just sitting there taking a little cat nap in their bus, their little shuttle, and this thing looks down in the window at them one night out there, and he turned around and quit. And that's a true story too, but.
Yeah, it's a weird deal. I know a lot of people have tried to research at the casino and everything. They'll run you off if they catch you out there now.
Yes, they sure will. That is tribal property. But even, Matt, even as recent as last fall, each year at the Honaby Conference at the Campfire Storytelling, we have staff from the casino that come and tell their stories of recent activity, of stuff that's still going on out there.
Yeah, there's constant activity in that area. And there's actually, it's so weird to me. I guess it shouldn't be, but there's another casino in a different part of Oklahoma that also has regular Bigfoot activity. And we've got quite a bit of good evidence out of that location. But a lot of these casinos are on Indian land, on reservations.
Right. And that they also describe a lot of activity that goes on around the times of their powwows and even their funeral ceremonies, because they have ceremonies there for folks that have passed away that go on for days in the outdoor areas, and they talk about activity that occurs during those times as well.
What do you think the draw is to the cemeteries and everything? Do you guys hear a lot of reports about Bigfoot around cemeteries out there?
Just stories from their ceremonies. It's possibly the singing that goes on, a lot of a cappella singing, a lot of emotion, and that they're probably curious and they probably even understand what's happening, and they are there to observe. These humans mourning their dead.
Now, I have known Kurt longer than I've known you, Evans, and I don't know if you're aware of this or not, but back in the day, Kurt Stanley used to sing your praises to me. Oh, you needed to talk to Evans. Evans is a great guy. He's got a great head on his shoulder. He's super smart. So here we are. I agree now that I've known you for quite a while now. You're a smart guy with a good head on your shoulders. So how in the world did you end up looking for Bigfoot?
Well, I grew up in Southeast Oklahoma, heard lots of stories from family and friends, and believe it or not, it was actually covered in the hometown newspaper. When there were sightings and stories and things like that, they covered it. And when I was a teenager, it was when the stories of the Falk Monster and Boggy Creek Monster were really going strong, and then also Momo, the Missouri Monster. And it just piqued my interest. I thought that was fascinating, just kind of followed that. But then, went on to college and all that, and kind of went by the wayside, but I got married, had kids, all that, career. But then that show Finding Bigfoot came on, and that really piqued my interest again, especially the town hall meetings, listening to folks tell their encounter stories. And then they had a town hall meeting at Express Ranch there in Yukon, where I was living at that time, in 2014. And my daughter and I went out there and got to be a part of the town hall meeting and got to listen to firsthand testimony from these folks, their encounters in Oklahoma. And, then that really got my batteries charged, and started looking around on the internet and came across Outlaw Radio, was listening to your shows, and Kurt was a guest on there, and he was talking about the Chicken Man. I realized that he was at El Reno, and I thought, man, I've got to get in touch with this guy, and I want to help with the North Canadian River Project. So I contacted you, and then you contacted Bear, and Bear contacted Kurt and said, hey, there's some crazy guy over in Yukon that wants to get together with you on this North Canadian River Project. And so it just kind of went from there. But my career's been in natural resources. I've been a park ranger, park naturalist, park manager all around the state, and just interested in the geography, the biology, zoology of the area. And I thought I knew, and I love to hunt and fish and hike and camp and all that. I thought I knew every creature that walked the face of the earth here in Oklahoma. But these things really piqued my interest, and wanted to try to figure out what are these things. In 2014, my youngest brother Keith and I went on an expedition through the Honabi Conference down in the hills south of Honabi, and we actually saw one cross the trail. Man, just from that experience on, I was just psyched, and so got together with Kurt, and we've been researching the area there along the North Canadian River for several years now.
Well, you were hooked after that sighting, weren't you?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. That was quite a wild weekend. My brother and I, we shared that interest, and he came up from Texas, and we met there. And, we were thinking, well, if we heard some tree knocks, because we'd heard about the Honabi area, and we'd been to the conference, and all that. And, but we thought, man, if we get to hear some tree knocks, or if we find some footprints, that would just be the ultimate. And then the Saturday evening of the weekend we were there, I mean, it just all happened in the same night. I mean, just everything. The rocks being thrown, chattering, whispering, tree knocks, screams, everything. It just completely blew our mind the whole night. Didn't sleep for a couple of nights after that, and just going over and over it of what happened. And so, yeah, definitely after that, I mean, I was hooked. And even when I came home, my wife said, "There's something, something happened because you're something different." So, after that, I was all in. So, and I heard the stories. I wasn't from the central Oklahoma area, Yukon area, but I, did some research and then heard all the stories and about, especially over in the El Reno area and then the Stinchcomb Refuge area. And man, we've just tried to do our best to get out there as often as we can and try to find as much evidence as we possibly can.
Coming from southeastern Oklahoma, which is a totally different world than central Oklahoma, did you, whenever you heard about the reports around central Oklahoma, did you kind of look around and scratch your head a bit?
Well, I was familiar with the Stinchcomb area and familiar with the river area through there, and had been a park ranger at a lake here in central Oklahoma. So I was familiar with the habitat, and I knew that around the bodies of water, the rivers, lakes, ponds, creeks, that there were some pretty thick woods. And so I wasn't surprised, especially along the North Canadian, there's a lot of marshes and swampy area. And so I knew that there was probably plenty of habitat, plenty of wildlife for a food source and all that. They could easily survive in there. Now, they're not, one thing I've noticed, the variation between southeast Oklahoma and this area in central Oklahoma is that they're not as near as vocal. You go down and spend a weekend in those hills outside of Honubby or anywhere down in there, Broken Bow, you're going to hear screams and hollers and whoops and all that kind of stuff. But one thing Kurt and I have noticed is it's very rare that they vocalize up here, and kind of what we theorize is that it's possibly because it's too easy to give away their position if they're vocal here.
That's been my experiences out there as well. Compared to other places, they don't vocalize nearly as much in the central area of Oklahoma.
Right. Yeah, they can they can hide so easily in the woods in the southeast in those rolling hills and valleys and stuff. But here along the river, there's just not as many places to hide. If you vocalize too much, you give away your position.
Kurt, I wanted to talk to you. I don't think we've ever discussed it before. Who came up with the North Canadian River Project, and what is it, and who all is involved in it?
Well, I thought, I want something to begin, like planting a garden, So I thought, I'll just use the catalyst of my main research area, which is the North Canadian River. And I plucked a little project there on the end of it, and that's how I got that name. I mean, that's the short of that. I just decided that if I didn't want to call it Bigfoot this or Sasquatch that or anything like that, I didn't want to try to come in with a big sword and fight my way through the big Bigfoot media thing, trying to be the next this. And I don't even call them Bigfoot most of the time anyway. You know that.
Yeah.
I call them river apes. But anyway, that's how I started that. And then, I threw it at when Evans came on board. He liked that idea. And so we just kind of founded it on that presence that it is the North Canadian River, and it's an ongoing project.
Right. That's what that's what attracted me to it also, because it sounded to me like a very serious approach, and it was more research oriented and that sort of thing. So it sounded legitimate to me.
Right. That's what I was going to say about it is you didn't use, Bigfoot or Sasquatch or whatever, in the name. And to me, it does have a very legitimate sounding name that won't get the door slammed in your face immediately. Do you think the name has helped you guys open some doors in areas that you normally wouldn't have gotten?
I think, I don't know what Evans thinks, but I know just the inquisitiveness of the whole thing is, what does that mean? What do you mean North Canadian River Project? What's that? Boom. Now you got somebody's attention. They're asking you the questions. You're not asking them anything. You go, well, we research down on that North Canadian River. Well, what do you research? Well, we feel that there's a primate species that's undiscovered that lives down along the river, travels along the river, and what have you. Are you talking about Bigfoot? Well, some people call it that. We like to call it river ape, prairie ape. In the South, they call them boogers. That's part of your...
Right.
I don't have that guitar with me right now to go blang, 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 blang. But that's basically it. And they are. I believe that was a good question, Matt. I think it does open the door. What do you think, Evans?
Yeah, I think people seem to be more intrigued, and they seem to take it a little more seriously. So I think it definitely helps lend some legitimacy and credibility to the research. And there's been so much, in Oklahoma, especially central Oklahoma, recently in the news in the last few years about this subject that I think people have seen enough evidence that's piqued their interest, and they're much more willing to think about it, talk about it, and they're more open to it these days.
Whenever it comes to you guys getting out there and putting boots on the ground, everybody's kind of got their own approach and their own ideas on how's the right way to do it. What are some of the methods that you guys use? Do you guys bait? Do you use calls? Like, what do you do? How do you scout an area?
Well, first off, for the most part, we've got 4 to 5 different areas. We call them areas 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. And the way they get their numeral names is by when did we start researching them? Well, at first we researched around, underneath, within a half mile diameter or so of that old 81 River Bridge. So that's our area 1. And then Evans, and the funny thing, you were asking Evans how he got involved in North Canadian River Project. I think the first time that I took him down to the river, we found tracks, but we found the most incredible damage, which we have all that filed and photographed and have taken other people down there. And we've got a little background on it now, which took a little prying, if you know what I mean, to get something out of a couple of old boys. And Evans can tell you more about it. But it was pretty, let's just put it this way. I don't know any old boys that could have done what the damage was we found. And it was in the middle of winter. It was at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, and they were barefoot out in the sandburs. And the damage is just incredible. And that's the first time I took him down there. But basically, we just get out. We bring our equipment with us. We devise a plan. Are we going to be out past dark? How late are we going to be? Is it going to be an all-nighter? What areas do we want to hit? Do we have any guests with us? And we basically start working the area very slowly. I keep my head up in the trees about as much as I'm looking down on the ground, because I truly believe that they hide up in the trees just as much as they do behind, the base of a tree, at least the smaller ones. And as we go, we find different things. We'll cast a print. We'll take samples. We have, the latex gloves and sample bags, and I've got, I just got them recently. They're the little plastic sample tubes that you could put scat or hairs in and stuff like that. And take it over, Evans.
Well, I'd say during daylight hours, we will scout sandbars, go up and down the river trails alongside the river looking for evidence. But then, and we'll take photographs and plaster casts and things like that. But once it becomes dark, usually we'll have a setup somewhere, an observation post where we can see most of the area, and we'll stay at that spot. We don't chase them through the woods at night, that sort of thing. We just basically find what we think is a good spot where we can see activity, and just stake out that spot and use the FLIR and night vision and things like that. We'll have trail cameras deployed. We'll have the audio equipment deployed, parabolic microphone, that sort of thing. And just we know that they're probably watching us. They've been watching us all day, or while we're out there. So we're just hoping that they'll be curious enough to come check us out in the evening. The reason also that we number these areas is because some of the areas are private property, and we don't want to give away the name of the landowner or something like that. So we kind of have that system.
What's this damage Kurt was talking about, Evans?
Along the major rivers, they'll have the river gauging stations that will send information through a microwave tower back to the Geological Survey that keeps an eye on river levels, and the Corps of Engineers and other agencies like that. So there was a river gauging station there between old Highway 81, new Highway 81, that just had been, the antenna had been ripped down to the ground, pushed down to the ground, and this was like 2-inch galvanized tubing had just been bent like a plastic straw all the way down to the ground. Then the gauge box, which was plate steel, and was locked, had the door had been ripped off, and all the electronics inside ripped out and thrown on the ground, and that box is electrified. So, if it was kids, they were taking a tremendous risk of being electrocuted. Plus, I don't think they had the strength to reach up there where the bend was in that pole was probably 7 or 8 feet off the ground, and just bend it over completely to the ground, and to rip that steel box apart and pull the guts out, and is just amazing damage. I don't think that's something that just your average teenager would have the strength to rip the door off that box.
No, I mean, those things are kind of designed to withstand anything, aren't they?
Right, definitely. So that was something.
Evans actually knows, can say it just almost better than I can, really. Tell them about me finally ran into one of those old boys that would talk.
Right, yeah. Kurt was down there one day, and some of the staff of a state agency was down there checking it out, and got to chatting with him, and he said, well, yeah, we can, this guy told Kurt, we know exactly what time of the day that this station stopped sending data back to the headquarters, and it was like 3:21 a.m. In the middle of winter. So what kids are going to be out there running around at in the middle of winter at that point. And this gauging station it's in an out of the way place. I mean, you have to, follow down a trail to find it. It's not real obvious where it's at. So it's just a lot of odd factors that come together Kurt had talked to that fella a little while and said, well, you ever see any, odd activity down here? And, you could tell by the way Kurt was the questions he was asking. He said, what was it he used, Kurt? Are you talking about, what do you say, ape or primates or something like that? Or it got around to, are you talking about Bigfoot or something like that?
Yeah.
And he said something about, oh yeah, we've seen some strange stuff down here before, because they come out and service those stations and work on them and install them and replace equipment, fairly often. So, and there was a wildlife research station out there, and in the BFRO database there is a sighting from that wildlife research station that one of the staff members from that station had submitted to BFRO of seeing one there on the river at that station. And that's unusual because, they're usually told to keep quiet about that kind of stuff.
Right. My mind's just racing. Any theories on why one would tear up something like that?
Yeah, I don't know, unless, those things are kind of noisy. They hum. They give off a pretty strong electromagnetic signal. It could just be that it's something that represents humans, and they feel like it's encroaching on their territory. There's some other water equipment there from the city of El Reno, not too far from there. Some pumping station, and those have damage to them also. Where something's pounded around. There was a well cover, that thing was like 2 or 3 inches thick steel that it bent like the top of a soup can, just bent in half and thrown on the ground. And we couldn't even pick it up ourselves.
That gauge, that cover, Evans. That one that's like 10 foot off the ground. And they've got a rain cover over these dial boxes or whatever they are, and that stuff is some type of metallic, incredibly hard metallic substance. It's steel, and it's rippled, kind of like a stucco house out in New Mexico.
Galvanized,
yeah, and. It just tore the heck out of it. And obviously something got up on top of it and grabbed it and just bent it back. And
just
I don't think it's
back.
My theory is different than his on when we talk about this. He thinks that, and it's a darn good theory, that they have different reasons. Maybe the sound bothers them, maybe this or that. My theory is, especially from the majority of the footprints we find, which are 6 to 8, 9 inches, that it's just a bunch of young males having a good time. That's what I think.
It's just, a playground or.
The teenagers.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Juvies.
Yeah.
Juvenile delinquent river apes.
Running around mad because they're not alpha, and you got to get out that aggression somehow.
You can't breed yet. I felt sorry for them, and I thought about bringing them some fruit and spray paint and let them do some graffiti and see what they come up with.
Yeah, take them some firecrackers.
Yeah.
Well, now, Kurt, you just got back from being out there in the field, and rumor has it you had some exciting stuff go on. What, you want to talk about that?
Yeah, that was just tremendous. This is fairly new. It's actually not the newest area we have. but it's one that we've been working for about a year, and we have found gobs of evidence, prints, even some stick structures, even some doodlings, if you want to call them that, in the sand. It's got a big sandbar that runs down through this area. It's privately owned. We can't really talk much about it, but somehow some old boy felt sorry for me or something, and he lets me go down there. And it's just Evans and I. In fact, he wouldn't have anybody else, and I had to bring Evans up there. And I've known the guy most of my life. He was a good friend of my family. But anyway, we've been working that area for a long time. As a matter of fact, we took the two girls from California. They've got a YouTube TV show thing called Try Stuff. And they were in from Los Angeles for one of those film festivals. They're actresses, they act and they write. They're very talented. And they come to some of these film fests and stuff. And we actually met them. They were planning to do some stuff, I think down in Honubby, but they weren't able to make it work in their schedule. So somehow we got to meet them, and they came through and bought us dinner at Johnny's Grill, the Onion Burger place in El Reno. And then Evans and I took them out to the river bridge. And it was fairly uneventful that night. There wasn't a whole lot going on. We might have got some eye shine that night. They like to crawl. They'll crawl up on us and watch us. And Evans and I got film of them doing that from way back. But last year, we took them back and took them to this area, got permission. And there was tracks everywhere. And they were so deep. And the majority of them were about 8 inches, 6 to 8 inches. And there was a whole hand. It looks like where they had scraped the ground. Were digging. And there was a whole bunch of mussel shells. And the funny thing about it is, when a coon eats a mussel shell, he just tosses the shell, and it's usually right by the water's edge.
Right.
And these weren't. They were all neatly in a nice little pile, and they're up on the bank further away from the water. And but anyway, this area, we call it Area 3, and I went in with a research partner of ours, who I guess he got in with us a year or so after we had started NCRP, and we went Friday night, and we set up camp and had a tent and a fire and all that, and then we moseyed down to the river and looked along the bank, and really didn't see a whole lot on the bank, and I took a can of tuna. My theory is that's their favorite thing in the world. It's not fruit or deer or anything. They love fish. And I think they all do. I really do. I think it's really their favorite thing. So if anybody's listening and wants to try to bait one, get you a good can of fish or something. They'd love that. And anyway, I tried something new this time. I took a tuna fish can and tied a string around it through the handle, the little pop lid. Mm-hmm. And I popped it open just enough that it was dripping, and a few little chunks of tuna were falling out of it. And I hung it up in the tree because I figure, well, a coon might be able to climb up there and knock it down, but there's no way he can pull that. I didn't open it enough for something to get. You'd have to have a lot of strength to open it. And did a couple of things like that, put a sound recorder out, and put a game cam out. And Evans had loaned me some more night vision equipment to add to my own, and took his stuff out there. Evans wasn't able to go. So that night, we're sitting around the fire and just talking And I had a battery system that I'd made recently so everybody could recharge their cameras and night vision equipment and cell phones and stuff like that. So I just plugged it in. And I think we listened to your latest podcast. And we listened to a couple of different things like that and just did our own thing. I mean, we weren't trying to, weren't screaming at them, nothing like that. And pretty soon something flew in, or almost went right in the fire. And of course, this guy, it's Chris. Chris hadn't been around him as much. He kind of jumped and oh, did you see that? Did you hear that? I said, yeah. I said, he almost got right in the fire, didn't he? And about that time, boom, one hit our little table we had set up for equipment, and we could, make her put her food up there and all that, had a lean-to. Anyway, this something hit it and went, well, bang. And we found out the next day, Saturday, that it was a big walnut, the hard core, or when they get hard, and that's what got thrown in there. There wasn't any walnut trees right there. I guess there was some elsewhere, but that's what the thing threw at us. He could have hit us, I guess, if he wanted, but he just wanted to hit that table, and he did it, and it wasn't until later. So we're sitting around, and I said, well, it's getting pretty dark, Chris. I said, let's start using this equipment. So I hand him my night vision, and I fire up Evans FLIR. And we've got a couple of, I got these headphones. They're parabolic headphones. And you just put them on. You don't have to press a button or nothing. And you can hear about 10 times what the normal ear can hear. And they were developed for hunting and shooting. They've actually got a suppressor in them. So if you fire a gun right by your head, it sounds like it's about a quarter mile off to your right or left. They got built-in microphones on each one. You can turn them up or down. And then I've got a parabolic mic with the headphones. Evans has a pair too. But we were listening with that, and he was hearing stuff. I hear crunches in the woods. I go, yeah. Well, it could be deer, it could be anything. And I started looking through that FLIR, and there was a head, a human-sized head popping up from the tree line about, 40, 50 yards away. And so I had a little blue light, Evan. It's a real cool little blue. It's real blue. It's actually, it's so blue, it's got black light filtering in it. You can shine it on a piece of white something, and it glows like a black light. But I turned that on and looked down there and found the button for the FLIR to record, and I held it back up and pressed down on the button long enough so it'd start filming. I don't know how many minutes I got. Seems like a half hour of different clips I made. And the funny thing is, this thing would kind of pop its head up and look. Then finally it came up to where you could just almost see the shoulders. And but there was something separate around its chest area. And it would bob back and forth and it was squirming around. And it was the weirdest thing I've ever seen. And this thing, you could see it kind of wrestling around with this little head right at its chest. And I thought, man, that's a little female with a baby. And I got that. Two others, I don't know if they were big river apes or what, but two small ones came up from either side of her. And all of a sudden they turned around and got behind her. It got down in this gully. It's a slough. Southern people call them. And it's a slough. It runs all the way down through there. It's between the camp and the river. And so a big old raccoon comes walking by between us and that slough. And when it gets right up close to that head bopping around down there, Man, it takes off running. And I've got all this on film from this last Friday. And anyway, so I quit filming. My arms are getting tired. And I hand that FLIR to Chris. And Chris Ramsey is his name. And so Chris takes it. He doesn't know how to record, but he's watching. He goes, that thing's holding that baby or whatever it is above its head. And I said, let me see that. And I looked through it, and he goes, go over there and see what that is. And I said, all right, I will. You know, I'm not scared. And I started walking over there, and he was watching on the FLIR, tracking me, you know, or backing me up. So like he was going to back me up. He'd take off running the truck in a heartbeat, I bet. Anyway, I go walking up there, and he goes, hit that down. And I didn't walk all the way to the slough. I didn't know how many were back there or what. But so I was thinking, well, that does it there. Most of these around here, that not all of them. We found some big old prints, but most of these are small variety of these river apes or whatever. And to end this up, because I don't want to steal all the time here, a few other things happened, but we went to bed. It's probably 1 o'clock or 2. We were tired from setting up the camp, and this big storm came in. And I mean, it's that kind of lightning where there's no separation between the thunder and the lightning. It's just boom, and the rain came, and I tried to sleep through it. I guess we did. Once it settled down a little bit, the rain pitter-pattering on the tent, you know, helps you sleep, and the thunder as it rolls off away from you, kind of relaxing to me anyway. And so the rain had quit. I woke up. It was at 4 o'clock in the morning because I looked and hit my cell phone. And we were parked. The truck was parked away from the camp, opposite of the river. So it's even further. And somewhere around my pickup truck and that camp came the most god-awful scream that I've ever heard in my life. And it wasn't like the ones I've heard down in southeast Oklahoma. I've heard them scream a bunch. This was more of a jagged sounding, like that. But it was so loud that it just, you know, people talk about how it goes right through them and all that. And I always thought, yeah, whatever. It does. It goes right through you. And oh man, I go, Chris, wake up. I could not get him to wake up. And finally I scream at him, Chris, wake up. And he goes, what? I go, did you hear that scream? And he goes, no, I told you I sleep pretty hard. And I said, yeah, I guess so. So I said, you know, it kind of made me mad. And I thought, well, I'm not going to worry about it. I got my recorder out there. And so I got it on tape, you know, so I go back to sleep. Well, it was only 20 minutes later. He's waking me up. Kurt, wake up, wake up. I go, what's the matter? He goes, these giant footfalls just came from your truck right at the tent, and they started running, and they were so loud, I could feel them through the air mattress. And he turned and went that way right when he got to the tent. And I said, well, that's great. I'm glad you got to hear something, you know. And I went back to sleep. So the next morning, Ryan White, also known as the Squatch Ranger, he came in from your T-town, and he came down to camp out. And so when we got everything organized, we went down to the river, back down to that bank. And that's where we found several over the next 2 days of these 16-inch footprints. These big 16-inch footprints everywhere. Yeah. So that's kind of how my weekend went.
See what happens whenever Evans isn't there?
Yeah.
Yeah, you know what's weird is Kurt had talked to the man that lives on that property, and he had, you know, Kurt had asked him, you know, what do you think about all that down there? Do you ever hear? Because he knows why we're out there. We've been honest with the gentleman what we're looking for while we're out there, Yeah, I mean, he's told Kurt about hearing screams like that were so loud they echoed off the buildings up there around where he lives, which is, probably not quite a quarter mile from the river, but he's heard weird things. And there's another landowner on some private property just east of there, a couple of miles, that we research on. And there's an older gentleman that lives on the property, and we've talked to him, several times, and we've asked him, you ever seen or heard anything weird down there? And he said, son, I've heard the strangest noises coming from down there. And he said, I don't even go down there. So,
wow.
People are aware that there's weird stuff going on there, but they don't want to talk about it, and they don't want to experience it. So it's an active area.
Evans, what's the most memorable experience you've had since you got involved in this? I mean, I know you had the sighting with your brother, but I mean, running around with Kurt, which thing stands out the most?
Well, probably the time that we were out there at this new area last year with the young ladies from California, Natalie and Tara, and we had been up and down the sandbars. We had seen all the footprints, taken measurements and video and all that. We'd heard, not too long after we got there, there was a scream from across the river, and the coyotes started up too. There was 3 wood knocks, but it gotten quiet. We had gone up and down the sandbar there, found the tracks, and then we were getting ready to leave. We were kind of heading back toward the trail where we had come down to the river. And then out of the corner of your eye, you see this huge chunk of wood come flying from the woods across the river and hit the middle of the river, that sploosh. And that really shook the girls up. They were ready to leave at that point. And then that was, we weren't expecting anything like that. So it was kind of unnerving. I think they were, because, there's controlled access to that property. And I don't think there's a whole lot of humans that ever get down to that edge of the river. We've never seen human activity down in that area. And like with Kurt and Chris and Ryan camping out there this weekend, I doubt that anybody's ever camped in that area in the last, long time, if ever. And I think they were really upset that we seem to now, for the last year, we seem to be kind of encroaching on their territory, and they're kind of getting upset about it. So that stood out to me, the log throwing.
Yeah, but did that thing holler? Did it holler and get all the coyotes riled up when those girls were there?
Yeah,
before it threw that big.
Yeah,
was it?
Yeah,
it was before.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, the scream and all that happened not too long after we first got down there, and then the log happened right as we were getting ready to leave the area. We were kind of heading back toward the trail.
Rock throwing was one of the first things that stood out in my mind whenever I started getting out there and experiencing things, because whenever you witness something being thrown from the woods, it's not a deer, it's not a raccoon. So
right.
Then you're left with, okay, well, it's either a human or a Bigfoot. And whenever you start breaking down the odds of a human being out there, and why would a human do that? And so there's just some old feller on the other side of the river just hiding in the woods, and he just happened to be right there at that point in time and decided to throw a stick in the water to scare you guys, or...
Right. Yeah, it happens all the time.
That property on the other side of the river, I got to studying it after we had so much activity there, looking at aerial photographs and that sort of thing, Google Earth and all that. And that's some of the thickest area of woods along the river for miles east or west. That's the thickest area. It's government property on the other side of the river, but there's really nothing done with it. There's I guess they lease part of it out for pasture and cutting hay, but those woods over there are thick, and nobody, is allowed down in there, and there's not much human activity, if much at all, down in that area. So that if there's a spot where they're going to be, after looking at it on the aerial photographs, I'm thinking that's prime habitat for that whole area.
You know, a lot of people talk about cover-ups, you know, the government conspiracy, keeping these things a secret. In your career, Evans, have you ran across any Bigfoot stuff from your work?
No, not really. Not in the areas that I was at. I don't think any of the areas I ever worked, if there were sighting reports, they were really, really old, but there was nothing recent. Nobody really talked about anything recent.
Never got any memos from the higher ups telling you to keep your mouth shut or anything like that?
No, I never have. No. Now, since I've gotten so active in it, and people that I work with, government agencies, they know that I'm into it. They give me all kinds of little Bigfoot gag gifts. You know, my office is full of all kinds of silly stuff like that, and we just have a good chuckle about it. But they know I'm into it. But I did have a law enforcement official in my office about a year ago. It was kind of when we were doing a lot of these library programs, and so we were really active and getting the word out and that sort of thing. And he kind of gave me a veiled, I guess you'd say, advice. He said he talked about how you guys might want to leave this subject alone. You might just want to find something else to do. And so I kind of took that as kind of not really a threat, but maybe a warning that might want to find a different hobby. So that kind of shook me up a little bit because he's a good friend. But I think he was kind of trying to give me a little bit of a hint for my own safety or whatever. So maybe leave it alone.
Huh. You mentioned the library stuff. You guys have been heavily involved compared to other researchers out there with the community and education whenever it comes to Bigfoot or whatever you want to call it. How did you get involved in doing stuff like that?
Well, kind of by accident, really. The downtown Oklahoma City Library was doing a promotion on. Oh no, that was before. I'm sorry, that was okay. So they were going to have a paranormal festival. The downtown Oklahoma City Library. This was a couple of years ago. The second weekend of October. The Honolulu Festival is always the first weekend of October. They had contacted the Honolulu Festival and said, could somebody come do a program at this Paranormal Fest? We'll give you all the time you want to do a Bigfoot program. And the folks down there, they knew that Kurt and I were up here, so they said, hey, would you guys do that, for us, do the program up there? And it went just fantastic. We had a great audience. We had just the reception was amazing, and people were really interested, and so it went over really well. Well, there's like 14 libraries in the Metropolitan Library System. They're scattered all over the metro area here. Once the word got out that, here's the Bigfoot guys, then we started getting invitations to do Bigfoot programs at all these other libraries because they were having a summer reading emphasis. They were using the theme Where the Wild Things Are, that Maurice Sendak book. Mm-hmm. And the Bigfoot just naturally fit into that. And so, from that, we got invitations to libraries all over the metro area. That's kind of how we got into that. But at every one of them, there was good crowds. People were interested. They were asking questions. They were telling their encounter stories. So we were kind of, we kind of went into it kind of skeptical, not sure what kind of reception we were going to have, and if we might have some folks that were, almost hostile or anything like that, but the crowds were great, and so we ended up having a really good time, made a lot of good contacts, a lot of good friends, and so we just by accident just kind of fell into it, and it worked out really well for us.
Kurt, I need to ask you a question.
Yeah. Okay.
How did you end up in a magazine?
Oh, well, I paid this guy No.
I saw they used your picture on the cover.
Yes. Yes, they did.
That was pretty impressive.
Yeah, I can't
He's
believe
been working out.
I don't see, I don't see the resemblance between me and Andy Goldberg from Saturday Night Live, or what is that cop show he's got?
Yeah,
Detroit 911
something.
Yeah, Brooklyn
Whatever.
911 or something.
Yeah,
Brooklyn 911. Yeah. But back to that real quick. I just wanted to say, you wouldn't believe how the little kids ask some of the best questions, Matt. I had one little kid come up to me during one of those presentations at one of the libraries and asked me, "What do you think the Bigfoot are thinking when they're looking at you?" And I thought, wait a minute, kid. That's pretty psychological for like a 7-year-old or whatever. Well, I don't know. I said, anyway, we were down at Honubby for the conference last year. And we were walking. I forgot what we were doing, but anyway, one of the guys that works up there stopped me and said, "Hey, I want you to meet these two guys." And this guy was a photographer, and the other guy was a writer. And they introduced themselves. And Steve Bird, a good friend of mine, and he works there every year. He's from North Carolina, Bigfooter. And anyway, Steve said, "Here's a guy you ought to talk to. These guys are out there all the time, blah, blah, blah." And they latched on to me. And it turned out that they worked for Men's Journal magazine. It's one of the top 10 magazines in the country. I mean, it's in every dentist, doctor's office.
Yeah.
It's all over the place. I've looked at it too when I was sitting there waiting for a doctor to call me in. Anyway, I started talking to them, and they go, "Would you mind if we interviewed you and photographed you and all that?" And I go, "Yeah," but I said, let's go find my research partner. I said, we kind of are into this thing together. We founded this group and all that. So we find Evans, and sure enough, they are the real deal. And we gave them interviews. We went down into the woods around the area there, and where we could get some trees in the background without a lot of people around us. And they took a bunch of photos. And unfortunately, none of Evans and I's photos got in there. But
so you can see who's more photogenic.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway.
Which one took the blame for that, you or Evans?
Evans.
Right.
He did. Well, anyway, so we told him, what we thought. He asked a bunch of questions and this and that. And I told him about my first sighting. And we talked a long time. They came to our trailer we had there last year and sat around in the shade. And I offered them water and all that. And I said, they go, "Do you know anybody else that?" And I said, "Yeah, I know somebody else." I said, he's up in the mountains, up on the ridge right now, camped out. But I'm thinking he's going to come down here. And they go, "Well, if you run into him, get a hold of us, could you?" So I said, "Sure." So we traded cards and stuff. And it wasn't too long. We were all just sitting around kind of taking a break from the heat. The talks, the conference part, the speakers were all done. So we were back at the trailer eating something and cooling off a little bit in the air conditioning. And a knock came on the door, and it was Shane Carpenter. Shane is with the Ozark Mountain Sasquatch organization, and a good friend of mine. And so he came in, we started talking, and he was telling us all about some of their new adventures, and at a new place they call the 400. Their documentary just came out. just the other night on Amazon Prime. It's called Into the 400, and they'll have a couple more to follow up on it too. And so he was telling us some of his secret. We weren't allowed. I promised I would never talk about it, and I won't. I won't, because it's pretty innovative. I think Evans and I have some innovative little tricks up our sleeves we don't tell anybody about, but they're pretty smart cookies, Shane and Randy Harrington. So I said, hey, there's these people here, and that's how he got involved in it, and they ended up taking his story, and his picture was in there, and he spoke. I think he got a lot of the journalism part out of it, but everything we said, he took part of my story and he took part of Shane's, and everything we told him, he represented it exactly like we said it. Our values, our thoughts on it, our theories, and didn't try to warp it like most media sensationalists do.
Yeah, so I was going to say it was a really good article.
Well, the photographer grew up in Missouri, and he was very familiar with Bigfoot, and he was a believer and all that. He was a great young kid, but the writer was an older gentleman, and he seemed really skeptical at first, and he kind of was coming at it from him. This is kind of a ha-ha, this is kind of a joke, that kind of thing. But then by the time he got to interviewing everybody, he said, you guys are really serious about it. There's something to all this. So we thought that was interesting that his perspective changed just in the time that he had actually interviewed people at the conference.
Yeah. Usually articles kind of, set it up and just make a joke out of it and make fun of the people and things like that. But this article did a pretty good job. I thought, at least, for Men's Journal magazine, like you said, it's one of the bigger magazines. I got a couple copies, whenever it came out. I just went to my local CVS and it was right there. No problem. Before we wrap up, is there anything you guys want to personally say or get out there?
Well, I was just going to say, I just want, everybody out there that we're associated with. I mean, we don't go knocking on their door, but we have met and made contact with some really good guys that have the same goal as us, and they go about things different. Everybody has a little bit different way of playing cards. Everybody had the same thing with this deal. Everybody has a different way of researching, and whatever works is what's right, is the way I see it. The Southern Bigfoot Alliance, I've made some good friends over there with those guys. Of course, Bigfoot Outlaws has always been a mainstay. It's what helped me kind of get through the, I'm not afraid. And I think a lot of that had to do with the way you guys presented your shows. You'd kind of keep, you were the glue, Matt. You at least try to keep, try to keep it on task, but Bear would get off there into a lot of different. I could always follow him though. I'm the same way. People have yelled at me for years. Why don't you stick to your dang story, Kurt? Why are you getting off on that? Well, because I'm thinking I'm having a good time talking about it. So I'm going to just keep talking about it any way I want. And I may want to put it in fifth gear and head down the road a bit and talk about that part of the story. But, with his humor and the whole Outlaws outlook to this phenomenon, it kind of helped me loosen up at the beginning and got me where I wasn't. Well, I better not say anything. But then it come to find out, everybody said, Kurt, we knew you were crazy anyway. You grew up out there in the country. I did. Right a half mile from the river. And you grew up with that chicken man thing and all, so we weren't that surprised when we heard you were into Bigfoot. I mean, you were a heavy metal. Well, I was a professional bassist for 36 years, and I played all kinds of different bands, metal bands and country bands and everything else. And so being in front of people and stuff, that doesn't frighten me a bit. Not one bit. But coming out and saying, hey, I saw something that everybody's going to think I'm crazy when I say something about it. That takes more guts than you think. And I just hope everybody can get out and that this virus gets the heck out of Dodge and people can get back to what they love to do. And I may be wrong. I'm not giving advice here, but I plan on taking more weekends like last weekend and getting out and getting some fresh air. And not one time did we mention coronavirus out there. I didn't ever say the word, and I loved it. So, what were you going to say, Evans?
I was just going to echo part of what Kurt said at the beginning there, was that, from the get-go of North Canadian River Project, we've tried to reach out to other investigators and other groups, in Oklahoma and throughout the region here, in other states, to network. We've really tried to work hard at establishing a network of fellow researchers and other groups, as we don't claim to be experts, and we're always interested in learning. Like Kurt had said, we learned so much from Shane and so much from the Outlaws and others that we've gotten to know through the Honaby Conference, and that's the main reason we go down there, is to learn and to network with other researchers and just sharing everybody's successes and so we kind of hang our hat on that, because we're not a closed group. We've got over 100 members now, maybe more than that. I haven't looked recently, but we have and we are open on our activities. We post events and activities and take other folks with us, because we're just excited for people to learn about this and be involved, and the more the merrier with us. And we just really tried to work hard at outreach and involving other folks and sharing together what we can all learn about this thing, because nobody knows exactly what these things are, and so we're just all trying to figure this out together.
If somebody's listening and they want to get a hold of you guys, for whatever reason, to submit a report or compare research notes or whatever, how do they get in touch with you?
Well, they can go to Facebook and type in NCRP, North Canadian River Project. I think NCRP, it gets you right there. And you can ask to join. You can leave us a note. You can also go through Ryan White. He is with NOBRO, the Native Oklahoma Bigfoot Research Organization, and they have a website and a database that we use the same database. It's the same set of questions. I think both Evans and I both have just something to go by. A lot of times I don't read them off, like the Miranda, but it's a good questions, because you get excited about somebody's story, but it's always good to have something like that because you'll forget to ask those certain little questions. That's very valuable in a sighting report.
Right, and this
what else?
It's an Oklahoma specific database. So,
yes,
and we're volunteer investigators for that. We cover the southwest region of the state. But NOBRO was originally formed by some Native American tribal members that are interested in the Bigfoot phenomenon, and we've gotten involved with them through the Honaby Conference, and great group of folks, and so they have their own website there, and all kinds of resources there and videos of Oklahoma areas that they've shot and that sort of thing. So we're happy to be a part of that group.
All right, guys. Well, I appreciate you coming on and sharing all the information you have shared, your stories, everything. You guys, I think I've told you this recently, but just to put it back out there, my own personal opinion, you guys are on top of your game. I think you're one of the best groups out there. You're certainly doing more, putting more boots on the ground than a lot of other people. And you're doing it for non-selfish reasons that are not ego-driven. Something that everybody could take notes from.
Thank you, Matt. We appreciate that.
Yeah,
absolutely.
We've been asked. I've been asked. Well, how much does it cost to go out with you old boys? And I figured that they've been charged before, and I always tell them the same thing. Bring your own food and bring your own sweet tea.
Yeah. Bring your own bread and bologna. Come on.
Yep.
Right.
Well, I look forward to the next time I talk to you guys. Definitely going to have you back on. Hopefully it won't take so many years next time.
Yeah. Yeah.
If anybody would like to get in touch with me, you can reach me at bigfootcrossroads@gmail.com, and you can find me on Facebook. Look for Bigfoot Crossroads as a like page. Give me a like. I post all kinds of random memes, cartoons, anything Bigfoot related on there. I'm going to be posting videos in the future. And check out the Bigfoot Outlaws Hideout group page. If you'd like to become a member, answer the questions, agree to the rules, and we'll let you in there. Until next time, see you then.